Hi everyone, it's 𝗦𝗵𝗘𝗧 here, and I'm here with Damian Porter. And I'm excited for this episode because it's been a bit of a while coming. Unfortunately, because of my health, it's sort of got in the way a little bit, and so we've rebooked, and now we're into it. And I actually met Damian through the awesome people at State. And State are the sponsor of this podcast. So I feel really blessed that we were able to be connected. And welcome to the show, Damian.
Thanks, Mandy. It's a pleasure, and it's great to see you healthy. We're just chatting then. It's great to see you back on your feet. So thank you for taking the time to have a chat.
Thank you so much for coming on today. And I'd like to, if we could, like I know a little bit about your backstory, but I'd really love to for you to share with our audience today a little bit about because you have like several very powerful resilient stories. Um, but sort of like, I'd like to know a little bit about like, where you grew up and so forth, so that then we can, because there's always in everyone's childhood or or influences around that sort of gives them, it's like that little fire in them, right, that helps them progress through life.
Yeah, I hear you. Gosh. Well, first up, if we've got video going, I'm not normally red faced. I've literally come from 5 minutes ago in the gym, just fitting in a quick workout. So I threw on a black shirt, just happened to be State. Black hides the sweat, and it just happened to be State. So that corresponded quite well with those guys because Sean and Sam are awesome.
They are.
Um, and you asked about my backstory. Gosh, I was lucky enough to be on Phil Campion's show from 22 SAS just the other day, and he threw me with a question. He said, what was your childhood like? I've never spoken about that on a show, and it was unexpected. You've kind of done the same thing, so I'm a bit more prepared this time. So look, I was born in New Zealand in a city called Dunedin. The next country is Antarctica, so it's kind of cold. And I thought a fairly normal childhood. My sister was a ballerina. She went on to become a Royal New Zealand ballerina and went on to tour internationally with the original Cats with Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cats.
Wow.
So I'd grown up around a high performer. Started lifting weights at 13. Before that, it was just normal kid stuff. Now that I'm a dad, I realize that. At 13, I started lifting weights. And this was the actual story. My dad was downstairs ironing. He did the ironing. He did a lot of the household chores as well as his job. And he had some weights down there. He was a strong guy for rugby back then. And I looked at the barbell, homemade stuff, and I said, "Oh, Dad, can you show me how to do this?" And he said, "Yeah." And that was why I started lifting weights. It wasn't because I was small, and I was small. It wasn't because I had any syndromes like the little guy syndrome or anything. I just started doing it because my dad told me how to do it, and it was cool, and I wanted to lift his weights. So it was nice to look up to his barbell, and I had my barbell, and I enjoyed that. And I guess that, literally thinking as I talk, Mandy, that was probably where I learned to push for more. His barbell was literally in front of mine. Um, Went on to become international bodybuilding champion at quite a young age, 17 through 20 in those ranks. Almost went to the world championships um, to compete against another guy, probably the best in the world at the time, 𝗵𝗆𝗆, and I broke my ankle and missed out on that. But that was quite a interesting revelation. That sort of showed me that bodybuilding back then in the young days, a young egotistical male, uh, is very self-centered, and it was just a strange thing. Um, Summing up from there, personal trainer for many years. We started personal training in New Zealand at Les Mills, um, and I trained anybody from ballerinas to All Blacks, elderly to garbage bin drivers, and it was great. But kind of niche population in the gyms. But then I went on to join the military. I joined the military part-time. I was lucky enough while I was part-time to be offered a full-time contract in a mission to East Timor in 2000, 2001. Did that. That lit a fire under my belly. And long story short, in 2003, I joined the Royal New Zealand Infantry Regiment in in Palmerston North in a place called Linton, became a regular soldier. 2005, a opportunity came up to do selection for a special forces unit, a new squadron that New Zealand SAS has started called the Counter-Terrorist Tactical Assault Group. So for those listening, guys in black going and blowing up the houses and rescuing the hostages, killing bad guys if you need to. Our job was to rescue these hostages. Did that in 2005, passed selection along with a bunch of amazing men. No females turned up at that stage. And went on to serve there for 3 or 4 years. I think 2005, I left in 2009. But I had a break there. I came to Australia, became a police officer, and I spent a couple of years in Western Australia Police. And then I joined the Fire Brigade, and now I'm here in the Fire Brigade. I've got a couple of businesses. I teach self-defense, taught that for 23 years, and now I've sort of rebranded as How Not to Die Guy. So I guess finally, I've only been able to do it right now. I've managed to have a succinct map of where I've come from and what I've done. But I've been around a few places and done a few things and met some great people. And most importantly, I've learned from great people along the way, and they've helped me to get to where I am.
Yeah, that's cool. And the thing is that, you know, each chapter, you know, in that story, right, you can tell where the resilience has come from, like each step of the way. And that's exciting. And so when you, what do you think would be probably the most challenging, or maybe 2 or 3 lessons maybe that have been the most challenging for you, that have really like impacted you when it comes to maybe emotional resilience and mental resilience and even physical resilience as well? Because they all kind of play hand in hand at some point, right?
They're very intermeshed, Mandy, in my opinion. Anything I give
Yeah.
out here to audience, it's just my opinion.
Yes.
And it's maybe things I've learned from other people, but yeah, they're interlinked. If you don't have physical resilience, I don't believe you can have mental resilience and so on.
Yeah.
The answer to your question, I'm sure that the self-discipline that I had to teach myself for bodybuilding, even though I really dislike bodybuilding, I don't think it's a sport. I think it's a very strange thing to do. It does teach you a lot of discipline if you do it right.
Yes.
And that's from training, from the actual set you do, from going to the gym when you're not really wanting to pushing through that last rep, but also to the dieting. And that's where the bodybuilding competition thing comes in. Now it can flip the other way. You can get body dysmorphia, which I believe I've been through. You can get eating disorders, which I've been through at short times. But I guess that's why I'm saying the resilience to get through those and try and have a growth from that has been good. So I definitely say my body's got me everything I've experienced and been lucky enough to experience. And I say that because the bodybuilding allowed me to then learn how to actually get fit enough for special forces, which was an amazingly hard thing. So the army was a little bit hard, but I'd won things like top soldier. I was one of I was in the upper tiers of the military because I wanted to push myself against others. But then I had my ego broken down and thrown away, which was great when I went for the special forces. Even though you're King Dick, and I say that viciously at myself, you're definitely not that when you join the special forces or when you select for it. So that was my next big challenge, and and I've said it so often, going through selection and joining the unit and working with those men and women now, because there's on our squadron there was only men that were shooters or operators, but there were some amazing females like a psychologist, 𝗬𝗔𝗍𝘍, our store men and store women, the doctors and so on. Working with those amazing men and women brings you down to earth. It really and supports you as well. It's very uplifting. So you learn a lot of resilience there. You learn about the mission and putting everything on the line to do a job. And then afterwards, policing was a piece of cake compared to that. When you step down, it's quite easy. But afterwards, the transitioning from out of the unit, out of the special forces and into civilian life, that really teaches you a lot of resilience if you make it. And a lot of people don't make it. A lot of people end up with either a bullet in their head or end up and not being here. And that teaches you a lot of resilience. And that was what I was leaning towards before talking about the bodybuilding is post-traumatic growth. And If you can grow
Yeah.
from that, growth means you're bigger than you were before. So
Yeah.
those are the three, to answer your question, three sort of crucibles that I went through that I
Yeah.
believe. And I never thought I'd be going through a crucible at 49 years old. I thought I'd sort of been through all those hard parts, but life's a journey. And as some amazing men and women say that have been through this, Chris Van Sant, Tom Satterley, Jen Satterley, all these people that have been through Delta Force and amazing PTSD awareness.
Yeah.
They all say they're a work in progress, and I say the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. I don't feel like it's possible, and I don't mean, and I'm not saying it in a negative way, for you to ever feel like once you get to that point that you're done and dusted with your personal growth, right? You always think, oh, when I get to here, you know what I mean? And then as you start learning the lessons through life, you realize that you're never actually going to get to there. It's just going to be growing, growing, growing.
That's not how men think, Mandy, at all. Now, I just noticed there's a courier at my door, so you might get a ding dong going on.
Okay.
Look, that's not how men think. I don't. Again, only my opinion. When I think I've cracked the code, that's it. Job done. Move on. But women are so self-reflective. I love that. It's great to
Yeah.
learn from them as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Well, I used to be like crack the code very much, and I had to learn the hard way that
Yeah.
wasn't the case. So
You know, going back to what you said, that that self-reflection, I learned that from Steve Hansen just the other day at New Zealand All Blacks coach, which it's amazing to be able to speak to people here. And it's just constantly looking at where you're at, where everybody else at is around, you know, who's about the team for the All Blacks, and then seeing, is what you're doing going to benefit the team? So for me, is what I'm doing going to benefit my relationship with my son? Is what I'm doing going to benefit my fathering, and so on? So the self-reflection is important. And for me, it's a massive work in progress, because that's difficult.
yeah, it is. And I think too, it's really only just been through like the last few years for me. Like I was always like smashing goals, like that was it, right? Bullet a gate all the time. And I sort of just wanted to conquer, conquer, conquer. And so that's what I would do. And it never felt as fulfilling once I got there. And then I would
Oh,
have
that's
these like
interesting.
lows, right? So I'd be like, just go so hard to achieve it. And then I'd get there and it's just like, oh, it doesn't feel like what I thought it would feel. I mean, it's great at the moment and you're grateful for it, but it's like I just go, what's next? What's next? What's next? Right? Because it never felt good enough. And so I think, thinking about reflection, it's been, yeah, probably just been the last few years that I really had to wake the hell up, right, and go, okay, you know, I've got to look at this from a different angle now. How am I going to do that? And so I'm grateful for that. Don't want to have to go through what I've been through again, but I'm grateful for the lessons that I've learned, right?
Absolutely. What you're saying there reminds me of Tony Robbins, and he'll throw lines out and quotes out and things. But Tony Robbins used to say, if you're the type of person that says, "I'll be happy when I go on holiday,
Yeah.
I'll have a rest when I go on holiday," then geez, your life is going to suck between now and then. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
a,
That's true.
a good friend of mine, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, world record holder,
Yeah.
um, he doesn't get satisfaction from the finish that you said. He,
Yeah.
he gets satisfaction, and so does David Goggins, and I can go into that. And he gets satisfaction from the doing, which
Yeah.
is easy to say. I think amazing if you're bred that way, and Goggins and Todd are, but that's the what who's the guy, Andrew Huberman, says that's probably the eureka moment, the Pandora's box. If you can tap into
Yes.
enjoying the actual process rather than relying on the end result, then
Yeah.
you're going to have a great life.
That's sure. I think that does come from um, that helps having that discipline that you were talking about as well, right? I think I learnt um, discipline a lot myself, and so I knew how to just be super, super dedicated and just, but I still had that end goal that I wanted to win, right? That was, and especially if someone said to me, "Oh, you can't do that," then I'm like, well, fuck you, eat my
Watch
dust,
me.
like, you know what I
Watch
mean?
me.
Like, yeah. And so, and that kind of would help me along the way appreciate the steps, right? So, I think, you know, having discipline and not only that too, like, you know, for yourself, having that when you're young, that having that inbuilt into you and being able to enjoy that, that would have come in so handy for you, especially once you're in special forces, right? Because once you start moving into that's like a whole different kettle of fish for you, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's all these little, that's what I'm saying, it's all these little things that you sort of get to move forward with into your next chapter. And so when you were transitioning, you know, out of that and then into the police force, what was that like to you? Because, you know, transitioning back into civilian life can be really traumatic. And
Yeah, it can.
so how did you handle that?
Look, I literally went straight to the police academy, essentially in a very short period of time. So that was pretty easy. You got structure,
Yeah.
which is what we have in the military. Even the special force, we have structure. And you've got goals. You're task orientated. Like it'll be like pass this test, and I was trying to top all the tests and top all the subjects and things. So that was pretty easy. It was like I hadn't fully left and just trying to sit in an office or try and get a job or something. Um, what was hard, and I mean really hard, and then it was even worse with the fireys, joining the fire brigade at the fire school. That was terrible. Um, is the people around you didn't have the same drive. They didn't have
Yeah.
the same standards, because in the special forces, we are at a high standard, and there'd be some other people that were like light years ahead of you, and you're still trying to be like them. You know, like I said, you're King Dick in the normal army, and now you're literally lowest of the rung. But you're at the lowest of the rung, you're better than every other human. And I don't say that arrogantly.
No, no.
We have to do that and
Yes.
have to have that mindset. So in the police academy, which I still laugh about that they call it that here in Western Australia, for those oldies, remember the movie.
Yes.
It was fairly easy, and then doing the job was a piece of cake, because you're not shooting people, you're literally talking to people. It's easy to step down. But Mandy, when I then went into the fire school a couple of years later, those people are not motivated to the standard. At least policing, you knew, was life and death.
Yes.
The fire brigade was really hard because you got people from all walks of life. Um, when I was in the fire brigade, that was great because you're all like-minded now. But overall, the answer to your question, it wasn't until a couple of years after that, so that's 4 or 5 years out of the military, out of the special forces, that it suddenly hit me like a wall of bricks falling over, that this was happening, that transitioning from that identity, from that purpose, was occurring, and that loss is huge. So, I mean, I interviewed Nick Caldwell from the Australian SAS here and from the Mill Gym.
Yeah, he's
Great
awesome.
guy. Uh, he stated in a show that transition was harder than war for him, and I
Yeah.
think that really sums it up for a lot of people. It's it's difficult because we don't have the tools, we don't know what's going on, the ability to identify what's going on. I didn't know for many years, and it's hard, but if you can communicate to yourself, communicate with others, you can possibly find the tools to start to figure it out. But back then, pretty hard, I think, is the answer to your question.
Yeah. Yeah. And uh, like I'm gathering also because of that experience that you've been able to help support other people going through the same thing, right?
Yes. So look, there's something called flow state, which a lot of people may be aware of. And it's when everything's just right, when you're doing a dangerous thing or some exciting thing and everything just clicks, clicks, clicks. It can be in slow motion. You're catching that ball perfectly. You're doing that perfect jump. You're getting that perfect shot, whatever. And there's 7 triggers. And the 3 biggest triggers for flow state is doing dangerous things, which I love doing. Um, and not because I'm an adrenaline junkie, I just enjoy that. Altruism and being creative. Now,
Yes.
special forces guys are actually really creative because we've got to think outside the box. But
Yeah.
altruism, and that's a fancy word, I don't know what the hell language it's from, probably Latin, but it's helping others.
Yeah.
And when so men don't often talk and females talk a lot. But when I get the chance to talk and help someone else, you then comprehend. When you're teaching, you get better comprehension on things. So if you teach a subject or at least talk about it, you comprehend around it more, which is what females are amazing at when you guys have a coffee and a tea and a drink and you talk about it all. So we start to process. So for me, it's helped process things to help me gain comprehension on what's needed. And of course, if I'm going to give advice to somebody, then I'm going to take my own advice as well. I won't give some don't practice what you preach sort of thing. So helping others has been really helpful for me, but I had to learn to help myself first.
Yes, of course.
Just quickly, legends, the Mandy Gibbons podcast show, Resilience for Men, is honoured and proud to be sponsored by State. Sean and Sam, the co-founders of State and I Connected, and our values align so much in supporting men to take ownership of their mental, emotional and physical resilience and anti-fragility. State Supplements for Men is the ultimate daily formula for optimum health, energy and performance. A proprietary formula of standardized herbal extracts and minerals, providing everything you need to raise your game in a convenient gut-friendly capsule. With proven ingredients in one unique formula for improving stamina, endurance, muscle tone, cognitive and physical performance, optimizing testosterone and other hormones for overall health and well-being, and to support healthy stress response in the body and promote restorative sleep. Mental, emotional and physical resilience and anti-fragility has taken a back seat in many men's lives, and we need to support men leveraging their strengths and leading with conviction and fortitude in their lives. I've included a link to State in the podcast details below for you, and thank you so much. It means the world and helps me continue to support men with amazing companies like State getting behind the podcast. Huge hugs. Okay, back to the podcast.
What happens is that like when you go through these things where you're learning about yourself, and by also when you get to speak with someone who's also been through it, you kind of get to gain insights into yourself, right? And sometimes it doesn't even come from talking to someone else. It's just like being brave enough to take a honest look at yourself and going, okay, where do I go from here?
And bravery is a choice. And those 4 words came from Tony Blauer. I love those words. You're not born brave. You're not a brave person. You might think you are if you're listening, but it's a choice to make at different minutes of the day. And you're so right, being brave enough to then realize, oh, hey, I need some help. You're brave enough to say, I'm not doing well, and so on. So bravery is a choice, and you just got to make that choice just once. I talked to a woman yesterday, a victim of sexual assault, and she hadn't reported. It was a day earlier, and I counseled her to attend the police station because she'd been in bed all day.
Yeah.
So it was attempted sexual assault, to be very clear. And first is denial, and then I just counseled her, you need to just get out of the house, because she couldn't get out of bed. Let's just get out of the house, go for a walk around the block, and then just attend the police station. She ended up going outside for a walk, and then rang the police, and the detectives came along. But she was brave. I was very surprised she did it, but she chose to be brave, and that's a choice. It's not an inbuilt thing, and yeah, I firmly believe that. Choose to put your shoes on, choose to step outside, go walk around the block, choose to eat some food, choose to go to bed and mindless TV or scrolling your phone till 1 o'clock in the morning. Just choose something. I believe that's a form of bravery for yourself.
Yeah, that's it. And isn't it interesting? I know I think too, we can be very, we can withdraw a little bit as well, when we're going through tough times. I have to admit, I'm not really I'm really, really good at helping other people and being very compassionate, but I can be pretty tough on myself. And something that I've had to learn, especially the last few years, being more compassionate with myself. But I guess I used to always keep a lot of stuff to myself, right? Help other people, but kept a lot of stuff to myself. So I never really told anyone about what was going on with me, my coaches, everyone, no one else kind of knew, you know, what was going on, just my coaches or whatever. And so I think it's like I had to, by that, I had to learn, I guess, to look towards myself for a lot of strength, and also to and for a lot of introspection as well, because I just really didn't want it. I didn't feel like stuff was anyone's business, and I'm not really a going to have a cup of tea type person or anything like that. So I kind of like, so it's been really interesting for me going through the last few years, and just learning so much about myself, right? And I do feel like it was very, very brave of that woman, and I think what you're doing now, because I've actually joined your program myself, because you know, that was, I wanted to get back into kinetic fighting. There was things I wanted to do, but I've got to take some baby steps, and I really felt like I wanted to be able to keep myself safe. And I'd seen your reels, and obviously I knew about you, and we'd been talking a little bit, and I was like, okay, I've got to do this, because I was just like clicking like. I was actually taking notes, you know, like
Awesome.
on, you know, on your reels, and I was like, look at this, I'm just going to join his program, like, yeah, and it's really, really awesome. And so, you know, when you're doing that, because it's not just for women, it's for men too. And so what kind of inspired you to start doing that? Because that's you actually made some really good points, which I might ask you about when we had a conversation by private message, because I think, you know, a lot of people want to do like martial arts or whatever, because they just think, well, then I can just go out and beat the shit out of everyone or whatever, you know, like, or I feel like, and a lot of the things that they're doing aren't really real world scenarios, so to speak.
Yeah. Three things to answer from what you said, from your questions. I've been teaching self-defense from what we learned in the Special Forces for 23 years. I teach unarmed combat that was taught to World War II soldiers, and then evolved into the modern times and is taught to Special Forces soldiers around the world. Delta operators, New Zealand SAS, New Zealand Army, and so on. And it's invented for literally someone like you. It's invented for a professor. It's invented for Nancy Wake, who was a beautiful 20-something female from New Zealand who lived in France during the Nazi occupation of France, and she killed a German with her bare hands. From these things we learn, and we're taught by the people that were tasked with training the spies to go behind enemy lines, training the commandos to do those covert missions.
Yes.
If it's self-defense in a fight, in a real situation, the guy isn't going to go, right, Mandy, let's go, I'm going to punch you in the face. He's going to grab Mandy from behind. He's going to do the bad things to her. You don't know it's coming, and unfortunately you failed in your situational awareness because he's better.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be relatively unskilled. But
Yes.
the things we teach and learn, you can finish that fight in 3 to 10 seconds.
Yes.
If it's a guy, it's normally an egotistical thing, front on, and some moron is trying to show that he's got a bigger dick than you and he wants to beat you up. That's not self-defense. You can probably walk away, or if it does happen, I can teach you how to not get killed, you know, how not to die, and to be able to protect yourself and eliminate that threat. But for me, it's teaching the people who need it from those bad guys. It's making a bad guy change his mind. If that's you crossing the street and he changes his mind, if it's you driving away when he road rages you and he changes his mind, or if it's you shoving a pen into his lungs and he can't breathe ever in his life again, that changes his mind too. And I'm pretty passionate about good people not getting hurt by bad people. But what inspired me for the current part, I racked my brains for a few years how I can use my Special Forces training and police officer experience to help others. And I came up with, I said I've taught this for so long, not many people take it on board, but I came up with a fairly user-friendly way to demonstrate on social media. And, you know, I don't teach the brutal things, but I do teach the things that, oh, this isn't too confrontational. I can do that. I can see myself doing that. I can, you know, drive my car away or do whatever I've put in the reels. and I enjoy it. It's been a puzzle trying to get that message across the right way. And the last point you had three was versus the sports. Again, if you're a guy and you want to go and learn to beat someone up, sure, go to MMA gym, go to boxing and do those things. But now you're running the risk of going to jail.
Yes.
Because you're going to get in a fight with a guy, and what if you crack him and he cracks his head? And it's going to take a long time. But when you're an 84-year-old male with his 82-year-old wife that I was lucky enough to teach at one time, a group of elderly people, I can teach you things that you can do to stop yourself from being mugged, stop yourself from being carjacked, to stop yourself from being stabbed in a playground, all these things,
Yes.
with not having to go to that UFC gym, not having to go to that 𝗏𝗏 place, not going to learn that
Yeah.
BJJ, because these people can't even raise their arm above their head. They've got lack of mobility. They sure as hell can't run. But
Yeah.
they've got to be able to do the job. And that's the difference in what is taught to us as combatives in military combat.
Yeah. Yeah. I love so much about that. As soon as I signed up, I started like, devouring it. And I just thought, this is really, really good, because straight away I could see that it felt like real life situations that you could handle, rather than having to learn a whole heap of other movements or skills, you know what I mean, that sort of like would benefit a sport in some way, but not necessarily. Yeah.
And under pressure, it's difficult to recall a bunch of things. If I can teach you one thing, Mandy, that's going to be pretty good. If I just teach you one thing, it's pretty good for most things. That's better than teaching you 10 things that are amazing when you can't process that under pressure and choose the right one.
Yes.
It's got to be replicatable under pressure. You have to have been taught how to use it under pressure, and it has to be based on basic human movement. Kicking someone in the head is not a basic human movement, neither is jabbing someone in the face, but pushing someone away is a basic human movement, and stamping someone's leg to get broken on the ground is a basic human movement. And so is headbutting, so is biting, all those things. So it has to be repeatable under pressure, and that's the difference. I can teach you all these skilled things, but we also have to teach you the reality of it, and be able to teach you to turn what Jeff Nichols said the other day, a SEAL Team 6 guy, to bring out the Incredible Hulk when you need it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. And I think too, it's like people are very afraid of physical confrontation, right? And
rightly so.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, it's kind of, I love martial arts, especially when kids are able to start doing that young, so they get used to, like, 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗧 and stuff, where they're able to get physical with each other and be comfortable with that, right?
Yes,
I think that's really, really awesome. And I think so many people are afraid of that, and that's what makes it even more scary, right? And why people sort of like they want to learn it, but they're also afraid of learning it as well, because then they're also confronted with the fact that they're afraid of confrontation.
You nailed it. That's what I was getting past so far for the first 20 years. I agree with you. I love the fact that kids do BJJ, because then confrontation is just a physical thing now. It's not an emotional thing. Some kids mean to me, and I put them down the ground. I think that's great. But yeah, in self-defense, you are realizing that there's a chance to get hurt here. But that's the whole point of what you're learning through the beginners courses. You're learning confrontation, stepped up further and further in a safe environment. And when I actually do the in-person courses, which I love, there's always tears from at least one person in the group. And I love that, because it's great to have those tears in a safe environment with someone who's safe, surrounded by safe people. You've chosen to do that, and we can actually talk through those feelings, because I'd rather it happen there than on the day when it's a surprise. And you've got to be empathetic and real to those people, and I think that really is of value.
Yeah. And do you find, especially, with men, do you find that, like, how do men emotionally, physically, and mentally, like, take on these defense classes? Because obviously, you know, because there's a lot more men now that do struggle with handling themselves physically in certain situations, right? And so, and when a guy is operating from a place of fear all the time within himself, he's going to do dumb shit, right? Because you're like, if you're feeling unsafe, you're going to make unsafe decisions, unsafe thoughts, behaviors, actions, emotions, all of that, right?
Yep. So your question is, how do the males deal with it emotionally, mentally, physically? Yeah, if there's somebody who's hasn't been exposed to fighting, again, going through it in the course is much more value to them, and they do the dumb stuff in the course, and then I say, right, that's that. Now we're going to practice the right way because we don't want to do that on the day. The answer is they do fairly well, and they get out all the bad habits and the bad things during the course, during the lessons, and they come out the other end as it's not an emotional response. A fight for me is an emotional. I may bring out some adrenaline, but I don't bring out massive anger unless you really have to, I guess. But it's a physical thing, and I guess that's what comes out for them. The ones that have fought before, it's just adding on skills to what they do. I had a female who was a BJJ champion, West Australian female champion. And she was easy to teach, and I just added on skills to what she learned. It was great to just plug in those things. And then she had more tools in her toolbox. She was much like a male males that I teach. But the males that haven't fought before, gives them confidence, stops them from turning their back and doing those dumb things, stops them from lashing out. We'll do some drills, and they do something that's literally, especially if they're young, they just do something that's young and dumb. Okay, yep, talk me through why you did that. Okay, now this is what happens when you do that. And then they just go, oh, well, that means this happens, which is bad, and this is bad, and this is bad, so I won't do that. So it's just like anything, they're learning the right things, and more importantly, the reasons behind it. I always say to people in the class, if you ask me a question, I can't explain it, I'm either full of shit or I don't know, and I'll find out from the Master Chief Instructor. And I've only ever had to ask him twice something that was way outside my skill set, and it's been really, really good.
Yeah, that's it. And so, talking about that, like, I know that you do in-person like workshops. So, are they like regular ones that you do? Are you going to places doing them? Are you?
This year, I'm going to be running little 1-hour intro workshops right around Perth, right around Western Australia. I'm going to target the Pilates gyms, the yoga studios, little fitness places. And the reason why I want to actually get their network of people some awareness around this. It's a win-win for the clinics, for the studios, and so on. They get their duty of care. They get to get their members something different, something of value, and they don't lose anything. They're not going to lose any members to me because I don't run memberships. And I really want to position myself as the subject matter expert here, not just online, but in person, and then be able to run with a warm audience more of the online courses, film some more advanced courses, and of course do some in-person workshops, the 4-hour classes as well. The answer to that, I run them probably once or twice a year. It's always dependent on how many people are interested. Fairly low uptake because of what you see with self-defense, but that's where the online classes and the online course comes in from the Instagram reels. They see that, oh, okay, I can actually do that. They've got to be able to see themselves, yes, I can do that. Yes, it's not scary. That guy's not too much of a weirdo. I'll go along and learn from him.
That's true. You definitely don't come across like a weirdo. So.
Thank you.
And I was going to ask, in regards to, you know, when you were transitioning out of special forces, like how did you go, like, you know, because you're police and then you're into fiery. So how does that go with your personal relationships, whether it's romantic relationships or friendships and so forth, like, because there's an emotional component when you're going through that time, right? So were your relationships affected like that, or did you find it challenging making new friends, or what was it like? Like trusting people or camaraderie?
Yeah, so there's three things there: camaraderie, friends, and romantic. Camaraderie comes from the same mindset as people in those jobs. So one of the guys in the fire brigade, he was a support staff at SASR,
Yeah,
and we've been friends for 12 years, and even though we don't see each other all the time, you're still exactly the same as you were. So that's good camaraderie. Um, I'm lucky enough at my fire station. A couple of guys ex-military, and we get that as well. On the same, just being on that same mindset says good bonding / comprehension of each other there. So
yes,
camaraderie is there. Friendships, look, coming to a new country, that was a different thing as well that we haven't mentioned. I've come from New Zealand to Australia. Friendships, it really comes down to the same sort of people, ex-military guys, maybe ex-police that I still speak with and so on. But people just don't get it,
yeah,
that mindset. I spoke about a guy before, Jeff Nichols, the SEAL Team 6 guy. We were on a show. I interviewed him for my show 2 weeks ago. Never met the guy. Didn't even know he was SEAL Team 6. I knew he was a SEAL who was a strength and conditioning coach. And we did an amazing show. Went for an hour and a half, which never really let them do. And we're good friends now because we just speak that same language. There's a lot of unsaid things that is understood. And when I come across those people like Nick Caldwell that I spoke about, you just get each other fairly well.
yeah,
That was friendships and camaraderie. Romantic, that's different again. You're going through so much yourself, different learning curves, and I would say it's just difficult. You got to be pretty open, pretty honest. I met a really nice woman the other day that had just connected with, has just started seeing a special forces guy, a current special forces guy, and she was asking me advice on what it was going to be like, and I just gave her that advice from my experience of seeing different relationships, how it worked in the unit. It's a difficult time. It really is. I think you'd have to have a very unique partner. I was going to say female, but whatever the hell it is these days.
I know.
You gotta have a pretty unique woman to be able to deal with you. And if you do get it, it's literally the yin to the yang. And again, harking back to Jeff said his wife, one of his quotes was, "I've never seen someone project as much violence as you have,
Yeah,
as you had." She's the yin to his yang. He's the strength and conditioning coach. He's the hard guy, and she's the meditation and mindfulness coach. And
yes,
but of course, when they get together, he can put his shield down, and she can do those things. So it's really meshing quite well.
yeah.
That's a roundabout way to answer your question, but not easy as the other part.
Yeah, I know. And the only reason I'm asking that is because I speak with a lot of veterans, and these are the kind of topics that come up in private conversations,
Sure.
and it's just really interesting speaking with them and just hearing some of the heartbreak that they go through, and especially and just missing their mates, right? And
Yeah.
feeling quite lost, and a loss of identity as well. Yeah.
I think it'd be harder for a regular soldier than a special forces soldier, to be honest. Um, because you're in a much bigger group, and that's literally, you're indoctrinated. You're not thinking for yourself compared to a
Yes.
ASF guy. I think it'd be
Yeah.
much harder. Yeah, you're just not as well rounded, and you haven't been exposed to other things. And it's probably much longer as well. Maybe if people are doing 20 years, 30 years. Very difficult.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so you're. Oh no, we've got to wrap up soon. So I've got one more question.
Sure, thank you.
um, uh, when it comes to your creativity, because that's, often creativity is sort of and being able to use your own initiative and think outside of the box is sort of something that I guess is not always considered as an incredible strength, right? But it is with what you've done in life. And so, and as you said, in special forces too. So how do you think that is how do you think that helped you when you're in special forces, and then obviously coming out of that as well, and then, you know, and bringing that into what you're doing now?
I was kind of unaware of it. You know, creativity, you just do stuff. Like I remember one time we had to make a mock-up of an aircraft door and an
Yeah.
aircraft fuselage. We physically made it out of plywood and screws and things. It was really creative. It may not be creative to the really arty people out there, but it was to us. You could just put your mind to anything. Another example in the unit, who tasked me? Some sergeant or some sergeant major. We had a big display coming on, like the Prime Minister coming in or something like that. And he literally said, right, Damien, you got 2 days to get a huge Photoshop poster, and I've put it on the social media sometimes of all the explosive entry we do. I was like, okay. So I'm straight up to the Intel guys. How do you use Photoshop?
Yeah.
So the challenge and the creativity there, and I put a really, probably by standards now, it's horrible. It's like kids play, but back then it looked pretty good. Transparent photos and things, and I made a good poster. I built my house. I bought a 1987 house. I gutted it from the inside, and I built a 2015 house. That was my version of creativity. And then again, this is not realizing these things where it brought me joy, because I wasn't as self-reflective as I am now. I talked to DJ Shipley from GBS Group. This is a bunch of SEAL Team 6 guys, and I've watched them do art therapy. I watched them talk about it, and for these guys, they made skateboards, longboards, and they did fracture burning. It was a really cool burning that they did with electricity and varnish it and polish it and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I reached out to him and said, how do you do this stuff? He said, dude, it's really dangerous. I nearly killed myself once from electrocution. Don't do it. But I found my own creativity with different things. And I think, Mandy, I might have found it with making those reels as well, and different things.
Yeah.
It's important to just do those things. I love woodworking. I love working with tools. I don't do it all the time, but just those little bits. And it, you know, if you're going back to the mental side of things, it gets mindfulness, it gets creativity, maybe a different environment. You've moved from inside to outside. You're now working with tools, you work with hands. There's a lot goes on, but creativity, much like when I spoke with the former New Zealand SAS psychologist, 𝗚𝗨𝗘𝗦𝗧, when I said to her, all these psychologists saying, Damien, you need a hobby. She said to me, Damien, the last thing you need is to fucking grow tomatoes or do all this other stuff that they're saying, because they didn't get it. You need to do this. So what I'm trying to say to the listeners, whatever it looks like for you is good for you. My hobbies are very different. I'm not out there doing the things the psychologist said, but I'm out there doing my own versions of self-care, which can help. But find the things that work for you, and don't, if you think it's silly, but it's working, then we're good.
Yeah. I agree 100% with that. That's
I
awesome.
hope that made sense.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense, because I know even for myself, right? You know, people, like, I love shooting. I don't shoot animals, but I love shooting targets, right? And I remember people going, how on earth can you feel like creative and inspired and you know, and even like try and ground yourself in that? And I I love it. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not probably what someone else would do, but I don't know. I do all the things that kind of like feel good in here. Like, I've started songwriting and doing all kinds of things, right? So I just have all these different things that I do. And I think that's important to do what fills your cup, what's important to you.
I agree. The podcasts and writing the show notes, that's creative for me as well. But, you know, going back to your shooting, that's meditation. Meditation, the definition is the absence of all other thoughts and the focus on a singular thought. And you're just thinking about those sights on the target. You're literally meditating to do the thing. So that's, from a physiological point of view, that's clearly what you're achieving, and doesn't matter the method.
Yeah. I agree. That's cool. And talking about straight talk, so you've also got your own podcast show.
Yeah, Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. It's a good title because it's long, so that's not good. But the mind and muscle part covers everything. You know, I'll interview a psychologist, then I'll interview a world record holder, then I'll interview a bodybuilding professor, and then I'll interview Gosh, who's up next? A veteran. So the Mind and Muscle podcast can really go through all the different genres. I enjoy it, and I don't say it lightly because it's a respect to the guests. I interview the best people in the world at what
Yeah.
they do.
Yes.
And there's been a couple up and comers too. I can see where they're going, but they're amazing guests, and it's an honor to be able to share space with them.
That's awesome. And so obviously I'll include all your links, with this podcast. But what's the easiest way for people to reach out to you and check out your awesome, creative, epic reels?
Thank you. I love that you said that. I might have to use that. What's the easiest way to reach out to you? Yeah, look, how about this? Google "How Not to Die Guy," and if it comes up on Instagram, then you can reach out to me, and then it'll come up the website. But just Google "How Not to Die Guy," punch that into whatever little 𝗣𝗍𝗍 thing you got, and it'll come up. I'm easy to contact. And people message me all the time on Instagram, and I get messages each week from people in some strife and some thank you messages as well. I had one that I'd saved his life from him watching one reel. Some people
Awesome.
tried to get into his place in America, and he watched the garage door go all the way down, and they couldn't get in. So
Yeah.
here to help, love helping and love talking, and that's how to reach me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I'm just making sure he's staying in the time slot here so
Oh,
you can
you're
get to your
amazing.
next appointment. So I appreciate you coming on today, and it's been incredible catching up, and I kind of feel like I kind of know you from our conversations, and now it's so lovely to meet you face to face, so to speak.
Thanks, Mandy. You're really good at this. I've been on a lot of different shows. I've been honored to be on a lot of shows, but you're really easy to speak with, and you got
Oh,
really
thank you.
insightful questions. It was really a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. I value that big time. Awesome. Well, big hugs, virtual hugs.
Nice.
And thank you so much for coming on. And thank everyone for listening. And don't forget to go and check out Damian's Instagram and so forth. And I'll make sure I include all the links to him underneath. So see you later, everyone. Thanks so much, Damian.
Thanks, Mandy.